Her dead sister was standing right in front of her. Mimi's ghost stepped closer, her face glowing with sadness. Her lips trembled as she spoke again, this time louder, her voice breaking like glass. "Don't do it, Simi. Don't kill yourself."
The night was quiet. The moon shone weakly through the small window of the house. In one corner of the room, Simi sat on the floor, her knees folded to her chest. Hot tears rolled down her cheeks. She bit her lips to stop herself from crying too loud. "Why don't they love me?" she whispered. "Am I not their daughter too?" Her chest shook as she pressed her face into her hands. Simi was the first child of Mr. Paul and Mrs. Juliana, but she never felt like one. To her, the word daughter was only a name, not a gift. All the love in the family belonged to her younger sister, Mimi. It was true that Mimi was sickly. She was born with asthma, and every little cold made her chest tighten. Sometimes at night, her wheezing filled the whole room until their parents rushed to hold her and keep her warm. They treated her like an egg, something too fragile to break. But to Simi, it always felt unfair. Every day was the same. Their mother, Mrs. Juliana, would place food on the table. The big plate, full of rice and fat pieces of meat, always went to Mimi. The small plate, with just a few grains and maybe one small bone, was pushed to Simi. Simi would bow her head and eat in silence, while her stomach cried for more. When it came to clothes, the story was even worse. Mimi wore fine dresses, shiny shoes, and bright hair ribbons that made her look like a princess. Their father bought her new bags almost every month. But Simi? She wore old torn skirts and faded blouses that used to belong to someone else. If she asked for new clothes, her mother's sharp voice would cut her heart. "Keep quiet, Simi! You should be happy you even have something to wear!" And the pain grew even deeper when her mom praised her younger sister, Mimi. "Oh, my sweet Mimi, you are so smart, so beautiful," Mrs. Juliana would say, hugging Mimi tightly. Then, with the same lips, she would turn to Simi and frown. "Why can't you be like your sister? Look at you, useless!" Those words were like stones on Simi's chest. She carried them everywhere. Even their father was no different. He always smiled at Mimi and brought her gifts from the market. But when Simi ran to him, he pushed her aside like a stranger. The house was filled with laughter when Mimi spoke, but whenever Simi opened her mouth, silence filled the air, followed by anger. Now, sitting alone in the darkness of her small corner, Simi cried until her throat ached. The sound of her sister's laughter echoed from the next room, sweet and full of joy. Simi pressed her chest hard, her voice shaking. "Why was I born into this family? Maybe I don't belong here." And at that moment, her tears fell harder. The night grew colder, but inside Simi's heart, a storm was beginning to rise.
The sun was bright that Saturday afternoon. The compound was alive with noise as family, friends, and neighbors came visiting. Plates clattered in the kitchen, chairs scraped on the floor, and laughter filled the living room. Mr. Paul and Mrs. Juliana were all smiles as they welcomed their guests. Mimi sat like a shining star in the middle of the room, her new pink dress glittering in the sunlight. Her hair was neatly packed with colorful ribbons, and her shoes sparkled as if they were made of gold. "Oh, Mimi," one of the women said, clapping her hands, "you are truly a beauty. Your parents must be so proud." Mrs. Juliana beamed with pride. "Yes, my Mimi is not only beautiful, she is also very smart. Last week she came first in her class again." The guests clapped. Mr. Paul nodded with joy, patting Mimi's head. "God has truly blessed us with this child. She is a treasure. Sometimes I wonder how unlucky we would have been if it was only Simi we had." The whole room burst into laughter. At the corner, near the doorway, Simi stood silently. Her face burned with shame as she hugged herself tightly. She wore her old faded gown, the one with patches near the hem. Her slippers were worn out, almost broken. The guests looked at her briefly, then quickly turned back to Mimi, as if Simi did not exist. Something heavy grew in Simi's chest, her heart pounded, and her hands shook. For too long she had swallowed her pain, but this time she could not hold it back. "Papa, Mama," her voice cracked as she stepped forward. "Why do you hate me so much? Am I not your daughter too?" The room went silent. All eyes turned to her. Simi's tears fell as she spoke again, her lips trembling. "I work so hard in this house. I cook, I clean, I wash, yet you never see me. You only love Mimi. What about me? Don't I matter?" For a moment, the guests were shocked, but before anyone could speak, Mrs. Juliana's face turned red with anger. "How dare you embarrass us in front of people?" she shouted. She marched toward Simi, and without a second thought, she slapped her hard across the face. The sound echoed through the room. Simi staggered back, holding her cheek, tears streaming down. The guests gasped. Mimi giggled softly, hiding her smile behind her small hands. "Go back inside," she hissed. "You are a shame to this family." Simi froze. Her lips parted, but no words came out. The sting on her face was nothing compared to the deep cut in her heart. She turned slowly and walked away, her tears dripping on the floor like broken glass. Inside her chest, resentment began to burn like fire.
The following morning, the school compound buzzed with excitement. Children ran around in neat uniforms, their laughter rising into the hot afternoon air. It was prize-giving day, and the big hall was decorated with ribbons, balloons, and shiny banners. Parents filled the seats, smiling proudly as the head teacher walked to the stage. On the front row, Mimi sat straight, her white socks clean, her shoes polished until they shone like mirrors. She wore a bright smile, her eyes glowing with confidence. Her school bag was new, her hair neatly braided. Beside her, Simi sat quietly, her uniform faded and rough. The hem of her skirt was torn, and her sandals were worn out. She held her hands on her lap, trying to make herself invisible. The head teacher's voice rang through the microphone. "And now, the award for the best student in Primary 5 goes to Mimi Paul." The whole hall clapped and cheered. Mimi stood proudly, her ribbons bouncing as she walked to the stage. The teacher hugged her warmly and placed a golden medal around her neck. "You are such a brilliant girl, Mimi," the teacher said, smiling wide. "You make your parents proud." Mimi bowed slightly and returned to her seat. Her friends rushed around her, shouting, "Congratulations, Mimi! You are the best!" Simi sat quietly, clapping slowly, her chest tight. Then the teacher's voice called again. "And for the student who must try harder, Simi Paul." The whole went quiet for a second, then soft giggles spread among the pupils. Some children whispered loudly, "Simi, the doll one! Simi, the rag doll!" Laughter broke out. Simi's cheeks burned red. Her eyes blurred with tears as she walked to the stage. The teacher handed her a small notebook, not even looking at her properly. "Try harder next time," the teacher said with a stiff smile. No hug, no warmth, no pride. Simi bowed her head and returned to her seat, her legs shaking. She heard the whispers, the mocking laughter, the cruel words. "See her shoes, broken like dustbin shoes. She can never be like her sister." Simi pressed her lips together, her tears falling on the small notebook in her hand. She wanted the ground to open and swallow her. At the back of the hall, Mr. Paul and Mrs. Juliana sat proudly, clapping for Mimi. They did not even look at Simi. Their eyes were only on the golden medal hanging around Mimi's neck. The more the cheers for Mimi grew, the more Simi's heart sank into a deep hole of pain.
and in that moment, something inside her broke quietly.
Later that night, the house was quiet. The sound of crickets sang outside, and the wind pushed softly against the windows. In the small bedroom, Simi sat alone on the edge of her bed. Her prize from school, the little notebook, lay untouched beside her. She reached for the cracked mirror hanging on the wall. The glass was old, with lines running through it like scars. Slowly, she lifted it and stared at her reflection. Her eyes looked back at her, tired, red, and swollen from tears. Her cheeks were thin, her hair rough, her dress worn. She touched her face gently with her fingertips, as if she was searching for answers. Is this really me? Am I cursed? Why don't they love me? Am I not beautiful? Am I not smart? What did I do wrong? Her lips trembled. More tears rolled down, dripping onto her hands. In the next room, she could hear Mimi's laughter again, bright, sweet, and full of life. Their parents joined her, praising her for the medal she won that day. Our Mimi is a star, their father said proudly. She will go far in life. Yes, her mother replied. She is the only treasure this family has. The words pierced her heart like knives. She pressed the mirror close to her chest and shook her head. Only treasure? She whispered. Then who am I? A stranger? A curse? She stood and looked at the mirror again, her face wet with tears. Maybe I don't belong in this family. Maybe they brought me from somewhere else. Maybe I'm not even their child. Her breathing grew heavy as she thought about it. Her chest felt tight, her stomach empty. She tried to smile at her reflection, but the face that looked back at her only made her cry harder. Why can't I be loved like Mimi? Why am I always the mistake? Her knees grew weak, and she sank to the floor, hugging the mirror tightly. The cold glass pressed against her cheek. For a long time, she sat there, rocking herself back and forth, whispering the same words again and again. Why don't they love me? What did I do wrong? The house was filled with laughter from the other room, but in Simi's corner, only silence and pain lived. And inside her heart, something dark began to grow, a shadow of anger mixed with sorrow, waiting to be born.
The next morning, the sun rose brightly over the little house. The smell of fried eggs and fresh bread filled the air. In the living room, Mimi sat on the sofa, swinging her legs happily as she ate from a large plate of food. 2 fat pieces of meat rested on her eggs, and a glass of milk stood by her side. Simi, on the other hand, sat on a small wooden stool, staring down at her plate. Just a few slices of dry bread and a little water. Her stomach grumbled, but she kept quiet. Mimi looked at her and smirked. "Simi, look at you," she said loudly. "You are so dirty. Your hair is always rough like a bush. No wonder nobody likes you." Their parents, who sat nearby, laughed softly. "Ah, Mimi," their father said, "don't disturb your sister." But the smile on his face showed he was not angry at all. Mimi continued, her voice sharp and proud. "Simi, you are a failure. In school, you're always last. Even your shoes look like they came from the dustbin. When I walk, people clap for me, but when you walk, people pity you. You are so ugly." Simi's chest tightened. Her eyes filled with tears, but she looked down quickly so no one would see. "Talk, Simi," Mimi teased. "Why are you quiet? Or do you agree that you are useless?" This time, even their mother laughed out loud. She shook her head and looked at Mimi with joy. "Ah, Mimi, you always make me laugh. You are such a smart child." Simi's lips parted slightly, as if she wanted to speak, but no words came out. It was like her voice had been stolen. She stared at her hands, feeling smaller than ever, invisible, unwanted. Mimi clapped her hands together and sang in a mocking tone, "Simi, the rag doll, Simi, the dull one, nobody loves her, nobody wants her." The parents chuckled again, not even trying to stop her. Simi's tears slid down her face silently. She wiped them quickly, afraid they would notice and scold her for crying. In that moment, she felt like a ghost in her own house, a shadow that nobody cared to see. Her heart whispered bitterly, "If they all love Mimi so much, maybe they should live with only her." The laughter from Mimi and her parents echoed through the room, but for Simi, it was like thunder shaking the walls of her heart. And deep inside her, the seed of hatred grew stronger, spreading its roots silently.
Every morning, it was Simi who swept the compound, fetched water, washed clothes, and cooked the family meals. Her hands grew rough, her back ached, and her feet were always sore. Mimi, on the other hand, spent her time painting her nails, playing with dolls, or sitting in the shade eating fruits. If she lifted even a finger, it was only to call, "Simi, bring me water. Simi, wash this dress for me." And if Simi delayed even a little, Mimi would run to their mother and complain, "Mama, Simi is lazy. She doesn't want to help me." Then Mrs. Juliana's sharp voice would fill the house. "Simi, lazy girl, useless child, do the work quickly." Simi would bow her head and continue working, tears running down her face, mixing with sweat. One evening, after washing a big pile of clothes, Simi dragged her tired body into her small room. She lay on her mat, staring at the cracked ceiling, wishing her life could change. The house was quiet, but through the thin wall, she heard her parents' voices in the sitting room. Mr. Paul sighed. "Thank God for Mimi. That child is truly a blessing." "Yes," Mrs. Juliana agreed, her voice warm with pride. "Without Mimi, we would have nothing. Simi, that girl is just a waste. Sometimes I wonder why God even gave her to us." Simi's eyes widened. Her heart stopped for a moment. She pressed her ear harder against the wall. Her father continued, "It is Mimi who will make this family proud. Simi is nothing compared to her." Mrs. Juliana laughed softly. "One daughter is worth more than 10 Simi." Simi froze. The words stabbed her chest like a knife. Her lips trembled as tears rushed down her cheeks. She hugged herself tightly, rocking back and forth on the mat. "I am nothing. I am not their child. I am a mistake." Her breathing grew heavy. She wanted to scream, to run, to tear the walls apart, but no sound came out. She buried her face in her pillow, her sobs muffled in the cloth. Her whole body shook as if the words of her parents had broken every bone inside her.
Late that night, inside the small room, the sound of Mimi's soft breathing filled the air. The moonlight slipped through the window, falling gently across the sisters' faces. Mimi lay on her fine bed, her blanket neat and clean. Beside her pillow sat a small blue inhaler, always within her reach, always guarding her life. On the other side of the room, Simi sat on her thin mattress, hugging her knees. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but she could not sleep. She stared at the wall, her mind full of heavy thoughts. Slowly, her eyes moved toward her sister. Mimi looked peaceful, her chest rising and falling. She looked like a princess in a dream. But Simi's heart was stormy. Her eyes were fixed on the little inhaler. It shone under the moonlight like a secret treasure. A sharp thought crept into her mind, a thought so dark it scared her. "Without this inhaler, Mimi is powerless," she whispered inside her head. The words felt heavy on her tongue. She quickly bit her lip, trying to push the thought away. But it returned, stronger. She imagined Mimi gasping, searching for air, crying for help. And then she imagined herself standing there, holding the inhaler, for once having the power. Her chest tightened. She shook her head hard. "No, no, I can't think like that," she murmured to herself, pressing her palms to her face. But her pain kept pushing the idea back into her heart. She thought of the slap on her face, the laughter of her parents, the cruel words of her sister, the whispers of her classmates. The night she heard her parents say, "Thank God for Mimi. Without her, Simi is nothing." Tears rolled down her cheeks again. She felt her chest burn with anger and sadness. Her eyes moved once more to the inhaler. It sat there, so small, yet holding all the power in the house. She reached out her hand slowly, fingers shaking, stretching toward Mimi's table. Her fingertips brushed the edge of the inhaler. For a moment, the room seemed to freeze. The ticking of the clock grew louder. Her own heartbeat pounded in her ears. But suddenly, Mimi coughed in her sleep, turning to the other side. Simi jumped back quickly, pulling her hand away. Her whole body trembled as if she had touched fire. She sat there in the dark, whispering to herself, "I didn't do anything. I didn't. I can't." But deep in her heart, the thought had already taken root. The night grew colder, and Simi lay awake, staring at the ceiling. She knew she would never forget that thought. And she knew, one day, she might not push it away.
The next morning, the sun rose gently over the village, its golden rays spilling into the small house. Birds chirped outside, their sweet voices filling the air. But inside, another storm was waiting. Simi woke early, her eyes still heavy from a night of restless thoughts. She folded her thin blanket neatly, as she always did, and went to sweep the compound. She wanted to please her parents today, maybe earn one small smile. But Mimi had other plans. When their mother came out, Mimi was already standing by the door with her innocent face and soft voice. "Mama," she said sweetly, "Simi pushed me yesterday. She almost made me fall." The words hit Simi like a spear. Her broom froze in her hand. "That's not true," she cried, her voice breaking. "I didn't push her. I didn't—" But Mama didn't listen. She frowned deeply and turned to Simi. "Again, Simi, why can't you be more like your sister?" Before Simi could defend herself, Papa came out too, anger already in his eyes. "You'll never change," he muttered. He picked up a small cane from the corner and pointed at her. "Kneel down now." Simi dropped to her knees, her heart pounding in her chest. The hot ground pressed into her skin, but she dared not move. Tears blurred her sight as Mimi stood behind their parents, smiling softly where no one could see. The cane landed on Simi's back once, twice. She bit her lips to stop from screaming. Her whole body shook with pain. When it was over, she curled into herself, her arms hugging her chest. "Why? Why me?" she whispered, but no answer came, only the sound of Mimi's fake cough as she walked back into the house. The taste of salt filled Simi's mouth as her tears fell harder. She felt so small, so invisible. Her heart was heavy with anger and sorrow. She pressed her lips to the ground and whispered through her sobs, "One day, Mimi, you'll know how it feels." The words came out soft, but they felt like fire inside her chest. That night's thought returned, darker and louder. She remembered the moonlight on the inhaler, the way her fingers had almost wrapped around it. Her hands clenched tightly now. For the first time, she did not push the thought away. She held it. She fed it. Simi lifted her face slowly, her eyes no longer soft, but sharp, burning with pain and secret fire. In her heart, a decision was made. A decision she would act.
That afternoon, the sun was high, pouring its heat across the dusty compound. Inside the small room, Simi sat alone on the wooden stool, her cheeks still wet from morning tears. Her heart beat fast, not from fear this time, but from something new, something burning, dangerous, and strong. Her eyes slowly turned toward Mimi's school bag, lying carelessly in the corner. It was a bright pink bag, the one Mimi loved to show off, the bag that carried her books, pencils, and her most important treasure, the inhaler. Simi's breath caught in her throat. The thought made her whole body tremble. She knew it was wrong. She knew if Mama or Papa caught her, the punishment would be worse than anything she had ever faced. But the anger inside her whispered louder than her fear. She makes them hate me. She lies against me. And they believe her, Simi thought, her fists shaking. Today, I'll make her feel what I feel. She stood up quietly, each step soft on the dusty floor. The room felt too still, too silent, as if even the walls were watching. When she reached the bag, her small hands trembled. She pulled the zipper slowly, the metal teeth scraping together with a sound that made her heart stop. She froze, listened. Nothing. Only the sound of a goat bleating outside. Her fingers dug deeper into the bag, pushing past books and wrappers until they touched something smooth, something familiar. She pulled it out, a small blue inhaler that gleamed in the sunlight, sitting in her palm like a secret jewel. Simi stared at it, her chest rising and falling fast. This was Mimi's lifeline, the thing that kept her breathing when her chest closed up. Holding it felt powerful. Terrifying. Her lips quivered, but she did not put it back. Quickly she looked around, then with a shaky hand she tucked the inhaler deep inside her bra, pressing it close to her skin. The cold plastic sent shivers across her chest. The bag was zipped shut again, placed back neatly where Mimi had left it. Everything looked normal. Perfectly normal. But Simi's heart wasn't normal. It thudded like a drum, faster, harder. Her palms were sweaty, her breathing short. She turned to the door and peeked outside. The children played, women chatted by the well, and birds hopped across the fence. No one knew, no one saw her. The air was heavy, thick with danger. Somewhere deep inside, the story was shifting. And Simi had crossed a line.
The next morning, the schoolyard buzzed with laughter as children ran in circles, chasing one another under the hot afternoon sun. The break bell had just rung, and everyone was free for a short while. Girls jumped ropes, boys kicked a half-flat ball, and teachers stood nearby chatting. Mimi sat on the bench under the mango tree, her smile bright, her pink bag resting beside her.
She giggled as two of her friends told jokes, clapping her hands in delight. For a moment, everything felt safe, simple, and light. But then, it happened. Mimi's laughter cut short. She pressed her chest and bent forward, gasping. A strange whistle came from her throat. Her friends froze. "Mimi, are you okay?" one asked, fear creeping into her voice. Mimi tried to speak, but only a harsh, broken sound came out. She fell from the bench onto the dusty ground. Her hands clawed at her chest, her small body jerking with every desperate breath. Panic burst through the playground. "She can't breathe!" someone shouted. Children rushed in from every corner, forming a circle. Screams filled the air. A teacher dropped his cane and ran. Mimi's eyes widened in terror. She knew this feeling too well, the heavy lock around her chest, the burning inside her lungs. She needed her inhaler. She always kept it safe, always within reach. Her trembling hands pulled her pink bag closer. She unzipped it quickly, tears spilling down her cheeks. Books spilled onto the ground, pencils rolled away. She dug deeper, her fingers searching. Nothing. Her breath hitched harder. She shook the bag upside down. Dust, crumbs, paper, but no inhaler. Her world blurred. She couldn't breathe. Her chest felt like a closed box, heavy and cruel. Her mouth opened wide, but only a faint wheeze escaped. The children screamed louder. Some cried. One boy ran toward the staff room, yelling for help. "Mimi, Mimi, where is it?" her friend shouted, grabbing the bag and checking again. But the inhaler was gone. Mimi's small hands clutched her throat. Her knees scraped against the sand as she fell to her side. The sound of her breathing grew weaker, thinner. Her eyes darted around wildly, fear shining in them. She knew, without the inhaler, she could die. And yet, hidden deep in Simi's bra, safe from all eyes, the little blue inhaler rested cold against her chest, while chaos swallowed the schoolyard.
The schoolyard was loud with cries, the sound sharp and heavy like thunder. Children ran in circles, their voices mixing into one big scream. Teachers rushed in, bending down beside Mimi, who lay on the ground fighting for breath. Her face had turned pale, her lips a faint shade of blue. "Somebody find her inhaler!" a teacher shouted, his hands shaking as he tried to lift Mimi's head. But no one found it. In the middle of the crowd, Simi stood frozen, her small hands pressed against her chest where the inhaler hid, safe and secret, tucked deep in her bra. She could feel its hard shape against her skin. Every beat of her heart thumped against it. Her eyes filled with tears. She wanted to scream, "I have it! I have it here!" But the words died in her throat. Her sister was choking, reaching weakly at the air, her body twitching with each shallow gasp. The sight tore at Simi's heart, yet her legs would not move. Children pushed past her, some crying, some calling Mimi's name. The teachers shouted orders, their voices cracking with fear. Dust rose from the ground where Mimi rolled, her fingers digging into the soil like she was trying to hold on to life itself. Simi bit her lip until it bled. Her whole body trembled. "If I give it to her, if I save her, they will know." Simi squeezed her eyes shut, tears streaming down. "But she's my sister. She's dying." Her hands shook as they hovered near her chest, almost pulling the inhaler out. Almost. But fear chained her. The crowd gasped. Mimi's body jerked once, her eyes rolling back for a second before fluttering open weakly. The sound of her breath was now nothing more than a faint hiss, like air escaping from a tiny hole. "Please, someone help her!" a girl screamed.
Simi's knees buckled, her chest rose and fell fast, like she too could not breathe. Inside her, two voices fought. One screamed, "Save her!" The other whispered, "Don't. If she dies, maybe at last you will be free." Simi pressed her fists hard against her mouth to stop the sob that wanted to burst out. The inhaler burned against her chest like fire. And still, she did not move.
The sound of the ambulance siren cut through the air like a blade. Teachers carried Mimi's limp body inside, shouting for everyone to move aside. Her head rolled weakly on the teacher's arm, her lips still pale, her breath too faint to hear. The car doors slammed, and in a rush of dust, the ambulance sped away. The schoolyard grew quiet. Children stood in small groups whispering, their faces pale with fear. Some cried into their hands. Others only stared, frozen, as if they had just seen death pass by. Simi stood at the back, her arms wrapped tight around herself. Her chest felt heavy, like a stone sat inside it. Her eyes stayed on the empty road where the ambulance had gone. Her fingers pressed the shape of the inhaler hidden against her skin. Hours later, the news came. "She's gone," a teacher whispered, her voice breaking. "Mimi did not make it." The words spread like fire through the crowd. Screams filled the air. The school gate shook as parents rushed in. At home, their mother collapsed to the ground, beating her chest with both hands. "Mimi! Mimi, my child!" she wailed, her voice tearing like cloth. Father knelt beside her, his face wet with tears, his arms shaking as he tried to lift her. "No, no, this cannot be! My daughter, wake up!" The house was filled with cries, neighbors rushing in to hold the broken parents. The air was thick with sorrow. But Simi was not there. She had locked herself in her small room, the wooden door shut tight. She sat on the floor, her knees pulled up to her chest, her face buried in her arms. The inhaler lay on the ground beside her, shining faintly in the dim light. Her whole body shook with sobs. "It's my fault. I killed her," she whispered again and again. She could still see Mimi's hand reaching, her lips gasping for air, her eyes filled with fear. And she, Simi, had stood still, watching while the life drained from her sister's face. Now Mimi was gone. Simi pressed her hands hard against her ears, trying to block out the sound of her parents crying. But their voices pierced through the walls, heavy with grief. "Why, God? Why my child?" her mother screamed. Each word cut into Simi's heart like a knife. She curled smaller into herself, trembling. Fear wrapped around her like a shadow. What if they find out? What if they know I had it all along? Her breath came in short gasps. The room felt too small, the air too thin. Simi stared at the inhaler on the floor, her tears falling fast. She wanted to throw it away. She wanted to bury it where no one would ever see it. But no matter how she tried to look away, the little thing kept calling to her, reminding her of the truth she could never escape.
Later that night, Simi's small room was dark. The only light came from the weak moon outside her window. Her eyes were red from crying all day. Her heart felt heavy, like a stone sinking in water. She had not eaten, she had not spoken. She just sat, holding the rope in her hands, staring at it as if it was her only way out. Her parents were still in the sitting room, weeping. Their voices floated through the house, broken, tired, filled with pain. "Mimi, our child, why, why?" they cried. Each word stabbed Simi like a knife. She wanted to scream, to confess, to tell them she was the reason. But her lips would not move. Fear locked them shut. Slowly, she tied the rope to the ceiling fan. Her hands shook, but she forced herself. "I cannot live anymore. I killed my sister. I don't deserve to stay alive. Maybe if I go, the pain will end." Her fingers were wet with tears as she looped the rope around her neck. Her legs trembled. She closed her eyes tight, ready to let go. Then, crack! The rope cut suddenly, breaking in half as if someone had cut it. Simi fell hard to the ground. She coughed, her chest hurting, her breath shaking. The broken rope lay beside her, harmless now. But before she could move, a chill ran through the room. The air turned cold, colder than night air should be. Simi's eyes widened. She felt it. Someone was there. Simi pressed her back to the wall, shaking. Her heart beat so loud it hurt her ears. She could not believe her eyes. Her dead sister was standing right in front of her. Mimi's ghost stepped closer, her face glowing with sadness. Her lips trembled as she spoke again, this time louder, her voice breaking like glass. "Don't do it, Simi. Don't kill yourself." Her words carried pain, but also love. Tears fell from her shining eyes, though she was no longer alive. Simi covered her mouth with her hands, shaking her head. But I killed you, Mimi. I killed you," she cried. Mimi reached out her hand, her ghostly fingers glowing in the dark. Her voice was soft, but strong. "No, Simi, it is not your fault. You must live. Please, for me, for Mama, and for Papa."
If you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe for Part 2. And let us know in the comments section, should Simi tell her parents the truth or keep it secret?